and welcome to the Real Biz Life Chronicles, where we discuss all things business, branding, and life. I'm your host, Tracy Fryer. My guest today is an ex-military medic who served at the Royal Air Force for 25 years. I met this person at the very beginning of my business journey, so around about 4 years ago, and we instantly connected. And this person has a superpower that no matter how much time has passed, since I last saw him, he seems to be able to look into my soul and know exactly what I need to hear without saying a word. Often it results in tears, but the good kind. He is the founder of the Leadership Academy. Nigel Tye, welcome.
Well, you're welcome, Tracy. Thanks for that. People are scared to talk to me now. Look in my eyes.
No, not at all, Nigel. I always love our conversations, and I'm really looking forward to having you on the show because, like I say, without even, seeing you for sometimes I think it's like maybe 6 months or a year, our paths cross again, and you always seem to know what to say to me. And I think that's why I get so emotional because it's like you just have the superpower.
I think being a medic for so long, if you know what I mean, to
Yes.
learn how to build rapport with people, to learn how to get that professional trust from people, whether it's a beautiful lady like you or a 7-foot soldier or a general, they
Yes.
still had a cold, if you know what I mean. They still had symptoms. So learning how to read people or understand people or get that clinical detail out of them, it's just been natural to me, and obviously that's got into my journey as a coach.
And do you find it's just having worked with people for so long, Nigel, that you kind of have that sixth sense?
Yeah, I'm just really interested in people. I've always
Yeah.
wanted to help people. My whole journey has been about helping.
Mm.
And when you listen and you take notice of people, and it's all about you, it's got nothing to do with me, the coaching side of things. And it's fascinating when you hear people's stories and journeys, and then you start reading it back to them, and they're like, "Oh my God, I didn't realize that's what I said, or that's what I'm
Yeah.
doing." It becomes it's almost like a strategy game that you play with people
Mm.
for a nice reason, if you know what I mean. But
Mm.
to ultimately help them understand themselves so they can move forward.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's definitely a superpower of yours. And it's just, it'll always be like at a busy networking event that I bump into you and you'll be like, Trace, how are you? And then next minute, like just magic comes out of your mouth. And I'm like, I've been in a mess. But then I feel better the next day.
There we go. I make most women cry for different reasons.
Oh my goodness. And speaking of journeys, Nigel, take us back. Where did yours start?
Oh Christ, that's a story. I joined I actually was a 10-pound pom here and grew up in Australia from the age of like 18 months old till I was 9 or
Huh.
10. My parents were emigrated out here. My father being a carpenter, cabinet maker, and obviously they were offering young families a new start. So Australia always meant a lot to me because my whole childhood was here, and then
Mm.
eventually they missed the family and all those typical things from living abroad. And back in the 70s, you couldn't really travel on holidays, so they decided to see the family again. And then it was a case of, well, if we see them, it's going to be really hard to leave them twice. So why don't we go
Yeah.
back? And next minute, I'm living in England, which I did not want as a 9-year-old. But where I grew up in Essex didn't appeal to me. It was just a little port town, like a Frio, if you know what I mean. And
Hmm.
I wanted more. I'd seen more in my life. And joining the military at 18 allowed me to continue my sport, which was what my life was all about then as a youngster. Have a big team, be able to travel the world, serve a purpose, help people. It really fulfilled most of my values.
Mm.
And yeah, I never expected to do 25 years. No one in my family had been in
Yeah.
the military, and um, so it was a bit of a shock to everyone that I wanted it. But yeah, it was just fascinating. Traveled the world. I've been into 4 or 5 war zones, and I've done most things that people would only dream of in a film and watch. And
Mm.
so that was just fascinating. It's and no day was dull. Put it that way.
No, I can imagine. And 25 years, Nigel, that's an incredible commitment.
Yeah, I think that as long as you're progressing, as long as you fit and your values fit. I mean, there's times you have bad tours with sergeants and bosses and officers that
Mm.
are you don't get on with. But the good thing in the Air Force, especially unlike the army they move as a regiment, so they move and their boss is still their boss. Whereas in the Air Force, you were a professional and you travelled and you went to a new unit on your own with the family.
Mm.
So you got to experience different types of leadership, different types of bosses. Some that you said, right, I want to be like that, and some that you said, I'll never be like that. And
Yeah.
then when you add a little bit of yourself in between, you come up with your own style and find what works for you. And mixed with the sport and the travel and the options and some of the things I got to do is just mind blowing. And you can't turn that down until you get a little bit older, and living out of a suitcase and traveling around all the time becomes a bit of a burden. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
fantastic.
And that's why you stopped?
Yeah, I think I'd reached the rank. I'd done all the tours. I'd just come back from Afghan. I just got remarried to Mika, my gorgeous wife.
Yes.
Um, and I think that all the challenges that I was staying for, I pretty much ticked the boxes. And it was at some point you have to almost sort of hang up the uniform and move on. And some people find that exceptionally difficult, and it's not an easy journey to leave.
Mm-mm.
When you live in an environment where everybody constantly wants to grow, everybody is wanting the next rank. It's what do I need to do for it? Where can I go? How can I do it? That they have a different mentality that you get also sometimes in civilian street, where people are very happy to be in the same job behind the same desk for 20, 30, 40 years. Um, so that transition of coming out with all of this sort of get up and go, and people are sitting going, no, I sit and stay. It's a different mindset that you have to get
Yeah.
used to.
And do you mean being surrounded by that mindset? Did you find that quite empowering, or does it get too much sometimes? Or do you constantly striving for that next sort of goal, I guess?
Bit of both. Being around people that are inspiring, people that are in positions that you want to be in, who are then
Mm.
mentoring you and coaching you to achieve that for yourself. That's inspiring because every day you're learning and you're getting more responsibility. And as a young man, that's what I wanted. I always had an old head on my shoulders. So when I was one of the juniors, it was very difficult to impart that onto people because I didn't have the position to do
Mm.
it. So I struggled, I think, for the first few years, finding out where I fitted in really, until obviously you get the right boss at the right time who empowers that and encourages that and puts you into a position of responsibility. And then that allows you to shine to show that you're worthy of the next rank. And that's what it's all about. So if you were
Mm.
an SAC, senior aircraftsman, or a senior aircraftswoman, you want to be a corporal. So you're going to your corporal and saying, give me a job to prove myself so I can show you that I can do it. And when you're a corporal, you're doing that to the sergeant. When you're a sergeant, you're doing that. So it never stops.
Mm.
Um, and as an assessor, when you get to the sergeant, flight sergeant rank, which I did when I left, that's what you're wanting from your team. You're giving them sergeant jobs when they're a corporal for them to prove themselves so you can assess them in that way. So it just bred that mentality of give me more, let me prove myself, let me prove myself. And that was
Mm.
inspiring.
Yeah. And I guess, Nigel, was there any challenges during that time? Like, was there ever a time where you just said, like, enough personal growth, I need to like chill now? Or
Yeah, I think when you come back off tours, I mean, you go to Afghan, which I did for 6 months, and
yeah.
it's not just the 6 months. The 6 months prior to that, you're on training nonstop
Oh,
on
as
all sorts.
well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They're giving you all the courses and all the education and all the briefings and that you would need to fulfill that role when you're there. So,
Mm.
let alone the 6 months that you're away in theatre, as they call it, operational theatre. You're constantly back at the medical school. You're at military schools. You're all over the country, wherever that speciality you might need to do. I was a specialist in what they call aeromid, so
Mm.
like the RFDS here. So I was the idiot jumping out of back of helicopters in battlefields, just like that, just like MASH. Um, uh,
Wow.
so it wasn't just helicopters. You had to learn how to do that in fixed wing aircraft or in jet aircraft.
Mm.
So you were trained on umpteen different versions of vehicle and transport. And when you were flying, you were let alone the medic, you were part of the crew because I had to know where all the ups and exits were and all the equipment on an
Yeah.
aircraft. So yeah, so going away and doing those sorts of courses, or maybe you needed to drive a certain type of vehicle when you were away. You needed to go on a course
Mm,
to get the license, and you'd be updating all your clinical skills as a paramedic.
of course, yeah.
All of these sorts of preps, as well as the briefings on what's going on and what your role is, and so yeah, by the time you got there, you almost understood everything prior to even commencing. So that's the level of induction that you had, which was huge.
And Nigel, how did that impact your personal life? Because I mean, you're so dedicated to what you're doing. Did you find your family was able to be a part of that for most of the time, or did it impact that in some ways?
It impacted hugely, and I think it always does
Mm,
with servicemen. My first wife, who supported me all the way through that. But when I first joined the Air Force, it was 98,000 people strong. Um, and the only thing that we were serving was going to things like the Falkland Islands, which was
mm,
it's still ongoing now. So out of 98,000 people, and there's only 2,000 people in the Falklands, to get dicked for that as a tour, you were very unlucky. But by the
mm.
time, but at the end of my career, when the role had changed from Cold War to operational deployments, and we were serving in Afghan, Iraq, Bosnia, Africa, still in the Falklands, Sierra Leone. The chances are, when I first started my career, you'd move once every 10 years, you'd get a tour. Now you were moving every 2 years.
Wow. Yeah.
So having that time away on a course prior and then doing the tour, that would impact, 9 to 12 months of your life, really, that you weren't
Mm,
available for the family, weren't around for the kids. And over a period of time, that, takes its toll on a relationship.
mm.
Both people end up she ends up doing it all on her own, if you know what I mean, and I'm not there.
Yeah.
And you come home and your role has changed. Even your mentality or your experiences you've had overseas makes you change as an individual.
Yeah. You're a different person in some ways.
Really. So yeah, over a long period of time, it does have huge ramifications, uh,
Mm.
and it was just funny that Mika, my wife, who
Yes,
who's
she's
who's my,
lovely.
who's my rock, we met in a war zone. So we
Oh,
met. She was Dutch Army. So for a very short period, she did 3 to 4 years serving as a radiographer, as a technical medical person,
I
and
didn't
we met.
realize. Yeah.
Yeah, and we met in Bosnia, working in a hospital, in a field hospital for 3 4 months together, and that's how we first met. So you never know where sort of
No.
love. But again, when you're overseas and when you're away, you get to know more about people. Because you have
Mm.
longer time. It's not 9 to 5. It's
Yeah.
24/7. So you sit and you're having breakfast together, as well as working together, as having dinner and evening meals and drinks in the evenings, or going to the gym or whatever. There's very little entertainment in those environments, but you
Of
make the
course.
most. But you end up talking, you end up conversing and having real conversations, and there's a loss
Mm.
because you're out of your comfort zone over there, and they're the same. And that's why there's this horrible saying that, what stays on your tour, what goes on tour stays on tour, because
Yes.
you end up building sort of depth of relationships with people, male and female, that
Mm.
you wouldn't get 9 to 5 on a normal job. So all of a sudden, you have this deeper connection with people, and that's where the military brotherhood and sisterhood comes from.
Mm.
Is It's not 9 to 5. It's a career. It's a life. It's a calling that you all do together. So everyone has a bond, if you know what I mean. So
Yes. Yeah. And Nigel, I guess, in business, there's often those high pressure situations where we, feel like a headless chicken. We're trying to do hundreds of different things. I guess with your military experience, there'd be a lot of high pressure situations where you're jumping out of a plane, there's different situations. How did you navigate your mind during that? Because I can imagine it's easy to get distracted or get pulled from here to there. What was your sort of process?
that, I think, is different for everybody. But for me,
Mm.
I used to be able to compartmentalize it, in respect that I couldn't, from a medical perspective, when I was out in
Yeah.
Afghanistan, the trauma that
Mm.
I've seen, and
Oh, I just
most
imagine.
most people won't see in a lifetime. Even people that work in hospitals won't see what I've seen.
Mm-mm.
And then I happened to run the reception hospital back in the UK that received all of these casualties. So I was getting 220 trauma casualties a month that I was
Wow.
managing, and still
Mm.
picking them off the back of aircraft at Birmingham International Airport in blooded bandages. So yeah,
Wow.
I've seen a lot. But the
Mm.
only way that I could compartmentalize that and deal with it and hopefully come out semi-sane, you do know me, so I
I
have my
do.
weird. Um,
And your superpowers.
the only way I could deal with it was the fact that I didn't cause them to be shot, or I didn't cause them to
Yeah.
be blown up, and I wasn't there, and I couldn't have saved them. But when they were with me in that time in the
Mm.
back of the helicopter or in the back of the ambulance or wherever it was that I was looking after them or treating them or responding, did they get the best of me in that?
Mm.
I can't I can't stipulate what happened prior, and I can't stipulate what happens after I've handed over.
Yeah,
But
of
did they
course.
get the best of me when they were in my care? And I think
Mm.
that's the only way that I could manage to control that. Whatever the outcome, I'd done my bit, if you know what I mean. And that, I
Mm.
think, is what's kept me sane through all of that. But yeah,
Yeah.
it hugely takes your toll, and a lot of people
Mm.
can't do that. And I think those, again, having to learn how to prioritize what needs your time at the most in
Yeah.
the role. And again, in the environments I was in, it wasn't just what needs to be prioritized. What's the most life saving for
Yeah, of
me
course.
and my casualty or my team or my. So there's so many things like bigger than me that I had to take into account that
Mm.
enabled me to do the job and prioritize.
And Nigel, I guess as well, being in that environment, your perspective on life and the value that you have for life must be also like hugely impacted in how you kind of experience things on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I think that, with those levels of experiences that I've seen so much more that other people won't have seen. I
Mm.
think also the fact that, what I've gone through personally in my life with a horrible marriage breakup, and I'm a cancer survivor, and all of these sorts of things, and some of the huge roles that I've had to take on and the commitment that
Mm.
I've given, I think it enables me to do my superpower, which is
Yeah.
when I sit with a client, I can be there for the client. And
Mm.
also when they tell me what they feel is their worst fear or their worst scenario or that something that they regret doing, and they see my connection is still there, and there's not like, "Oh my god, what did you do? Oh my
Yeah.
god, you did that." Just holding space for them, because they always say to me that, "I've just told you my worst fear or my worst
Mm.
limiting belief or whatever it is that's stopping them, and you didn't move. You just
Mm.
held that space, and that allowed me then to continue the story, or allowed me to peel the onion and tell you really the real thing, not what I tell everybody else on the top surface." So I
Yeah.
think having all those experiences now enables me not really to get flustered or scared or shocked really with what anyone tells me. It's like, okay, okay, I'm still here.
Yeah.
I'm still here for you. Keep going. And I think that just enables people like you for the superpower. Sometimes I didn't even have to tell you. You carried on the own story
True.
because I just held the space for you, and that allowed you to say some things that maybe you wanted to get out, which then released the emotion,
Yeah.
allowed you to see what was happening and heal. Um, so yeah, that's where it comes from.
And thank you for always holding space so well for me as well. And I think there's a healing in verbalizing things also. But again, you're so great at it. And just like I said, I've been seeing you for so long. The next minute I'm telling you my whole life story. So I really appreciate that you do hold that space so
I
well. And
I take that as an honor that
oh,
someone trusts me enough, and that's why I love the job, that trusts me
mm,
enough for them to be able to impart that to me, either seeking help or that they know that I'm a safe space to do that in. And they just
yes.
allow that release is great for them, whether they work with me as a coach or they just want to have a conversation and let rip, to be honest. So yeah, that's an honor from my perspective that, people are willing to tell me those sorts of things.
And I always feel like whenever I talk to you, a bit like what you said earlier, you always bring in like the best version of yourself, but always trying to, I guess, provide the best for that person as well at the same time. So you definitely do honor that.
Yeah, and I think that, there's a lot of coaches out there that, pretty much say, "I've got this 12-week course that will save your life and blah,
Yes.
blah, blah, or I'll make you a millionaire or it'll do all of this." And I'm like, Okay, that's fine. You're going to educate
Mm.
your client. They're going to be better informed and forewarned and forearmed, but you've never dealt with the problem that they came to you with in the first place. So they're never really
Mm.
going to move forward.
Yeah.
So I know I have all of those tools and experiences as a coach in my life, and what I've seen and done, and the whole of me really. And I just hold space and trust that I have the tools, the experience, the knowledge, all the way with really to take that person on whatever journey they need to take on. But I don't know what that's going to be until you open your mouth and tell me.
Yes.
Um, so it's purely client centric and led that way. Yes, there's strategies. Yes, there's loads of things in the background: NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy, with all sorts
Mm.
of things that you use as a coach. Sometimes it's just me, just listening,
Yeah.
and it's all of that that the client gets.
And Nigel, what would you say to someone who feels that it's a weakness to kind of, be vulnerable or to share their deepest, darkest secrets or things that they might have struggled with? Because I know a lot of people, and especially men, view that as a weakness. What would your advice to that person be?
Um, it's not a weakness if it's holding you back from being the person you wish to be, if it's
Mm.
limiting you from moving forward in your life, if it's stopping you from having the relationships with your parents, your family, your friends, your kids, whatever it is, then the only person really losing out is you,
Mm.
and people aren't getting the best of you. And it's the same with a leader, that, you don't have to solve all the problems. You don't need to be the expert at everything within your business. You don't have to have all the answers. That's why you have a team. And that's
Yeah.
why you have an excellent marketer brander like you. And why am I going to come and tell you how to do your job when I don't know it? I'm not good
Yeah.
at it. So
Mm.
empowering you by saying, look, this is a strategy I wish to run or the business needs to run. You're the
Mm.
expert. What do you need from me to achieve that?
Yeah.
Now all of a sudden, you're empowered because I've trusted you. You're a part of the business as a stakeholder because your word is now going to matter. And
Mm.
I've just not had to think about a thing other than what do you need from me to achieve the best of you. And that's what I do from a leadership perspective. That's what I do from a personal coaching perspective is what do you need from me to enable you to grow and overcome what you're suffering from? And from a
Mm.
man perspective, you know, I've seen that with all my military guys, which is why I went into coaching in the first place. It's my
Yeah.
core belief. Um, that we don't have all the answers. No one
Mm-mm.
has the perfect life. Um, and you can't move forward in business without a team or without comrades or coaches or mentors or because you don't know all the answers and you can't solve it all on your own, and
Mm-mm.
what you're going through in your life or your business or in your leadership and everything else, um, finding an ally that's there for you, and like myself, it's got nothing to do with me, it's what you need for you to move forward, and it's
Yeah.
different for everybody. I almost am that chameleon that can be whatever you need to be to help you move forward, you
Yeah.
know? So even from a disc perspective, if you're a D and an S, I can be the C and the I to help you move forward if that's what you need to complete the picture. Um,
Mm.
that's the sort of service that I provide. And a lot of people just need to understand that it's not a weakness. It's actually a way of personal growth for you to move
Yeah.
forward because there's an area in your life that's lacking, that's holding you back.
Mm. And if someone is thinking that the idea of having a session with you is way too scary and too confronting, is there anything that they can kind of do in the interim to kind of prep themselves for that big, brave step of personal growth?
Talk to me. I mean,
Mm.
um, I worked in a clinic and environment all my life, if you know what I mean, from a
Yeah.
medical perspective. So I know that sitting in some dark, or a light room on a couch talking is not going to work.
Yeah.
So I always say to people, look, we can meet in cafes. I can meet you at your home. We can go and have two, like you and I have done, two
Yeah.
takeaway coffees on a beach and sit on the dunes at the back and talk. It's
Yeah.
wherever. I don't need an office in respect because it's wherever my client feels comfortable enough to open up and talk in a safe
Yeah.
environment that suits them. And like I said, it's got nothing to do with me, so I'll adapt to whatever my client needs. Um, for them to get the achievements and the breakthroughs that they need to achieve.
Mm.
So when I turn around and say to people, especially in Perth when we have 9 months of summer, come on, we'll
Yeah.
grab a takeaway drink or something to sit on the beach and talk. And they're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
I'll, so it's again, it's just totally serving the client as you do from what you do. Um,
Mm.
what do they need from me? I've got loads of ideas, but what do they stand for? What do they need? Where do they want to go? What you need the
Yeah.
whole picture for you to be able to create on their behalf. And it's the same for me. I need to listen to them. I need to see their face. I need to understand their emotions. I need to hold the space when I know that they're pent to talk or there's something else they just want to get out. Uh, and
Mm.
and that's me serving them. So there's no scary bit. It's and that's why coaching can sometimes take some time because it's building up that rapport, that trust, that knowing that well they released 10% and he didn't laugh, he didn't tell me off, he didn't tell me, he didn't shock him or anything else. So maybe I'll just do the next 10%. And eventually
Mm.
you start to get to the core when they get to the point of total trust, and that's where the magic happens. And you and I have done that. You didn't open up to me on day one. It
I
was
didn't.
wow. I'm trying to
I
be
might
polite,
have.
but over a period of time where you understand who I was, what I
Yeah.
was, trust you'd met Mika and things like that.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, just being there for someone over a period of time, and all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, Nige, can we have a chat?" And it's like, okay, yeah.
Mm.
I always knew it was going to come from my superpower, but
Yes.
I'm not going to hasten that with the fact that someone then may withdraw and never do it. If you know what I
Yeah.
mean.
Have you ever had anyone who has wanted to perhaps meet on Zoom but not actually have the video on, just have you hear them out?
No, I haven't, but like
Hmm.
I said, that's available.
Hmm.
It as a coach, sometimes there's so much more to read from an individual from their face and their responses.
Yeah.
How, like I said, you can know that there's another word coming, or that you ask a certain question, and again from the sensory acuity, as they call it, you see the eyes move away, you see the face drop, you see them look at the other side. There's so many tells, shall we say, that you
Hmm.
are all a part of the coaching that nobody understands and no one realizes the science behind it. It's not just having a cup of coffee and talking. There's so much more going
No.
on. Um, when you take all of that picture, that reaction or that sensory acuity, or that feeling, or the temperature changes, the rosiness of their cheeks, or the look away of their eyes, says, right, okay, that's somewhere I need to come back to at a later point, because obviously that's a trigger
Right.
that I'm not addressing. So it's a whole witchcraft. I know that's what you're going to say.
I love
Uh,
it.
that goes into, you ask a probing question, you see how they respond, let alone the verbal answer or the emotional answer, the physical answer that you get from the body, from the temperature, from the
Mm.
change in them. It sort of leads me to where I need to go next with my next question.
Yeah, so really looking at their body language and those cues, because I think so many of us are not even mindful of that. We just chat, chat, chat away, we blush, we do whatever, and then we just kind of,
But if I
roll
made
with
you
it.
aware of it, if I made you aware of it and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm now doing NLP on you," or "I'm watching what you're doing," you stop. So it's
Probably.
Yeah. So when you become consciously aware of it, you stop that.
Mm.
So it's the subconscious that is where all the magic needs to happen, and that's what NLP is around, neuro linguistic programming. So I need to see the real Tracy, or see the real
Mm.
Tracy's responses, or what the words you're saying, the tense you're using, the emotion you're using, let alone how you're physically responding and where your eyes are looking. Are you visually recalling something or visually creating something? All of these are tells that you pick up naturally over a period of time as an experienced coach. That's the master part.
Mm.
That
Yes.
is the whole package that you're bringing to the game. And the client may not even realize what they're telling you, but it tells me where I need to go.
Yeah, I feel like you're sizing me up right now. Thank goodness I got my purple lights on.
I've already got the magic with you, so it's all right.
True. Yes, yes, you've used your witchcraft.
Yeah.
I don't mind. I love it. Nigel, I'd love to know in your experience, you mentioned that you survived a marriage breakup, you survived cancer, all your amazing career, all the different, traumatic things that you've seen. What have been, I guess, your top two challenges on that journey?
Oh, there's been so many. I mean, more than two, but the
Yeah,
marriage
feel free to
breakup.
share.
The marriage breakup. When my core value is family. My core value
Yeah.
is serving. With that breaking up and losing the access and the daily routine as a father, which is all I ever wanted to be, because my father was my
Mm.
my idol, my model. I lost him 16 years ago. Um, but that was in my head all I wanted to be and my purpose. So having that sort of taken away from me when I didn't realize I was doing anything wrong, or that the problem was that severe, and it was very. There's a long story to that, which doesn't matter, but yeah, that really rocked me as a person.
Mm.
Uh, then carrying through my career and doing the Aramed and the tours, going to Afghan was confronting, to say the least, and what I seen and did and worked with over there. And then running that hospital, that I sort of won national leadership awards for, because the team
Yeah.
was like, Prince Charles, or King Charles as he is now, used to come and visit the casualties, 3, 4, 5 times a year. So I got to meet him, God knows how many times, and to the
Wow.
point where I used to stand in the lineup, do the handshake, or he'd come into my office without anyone even telling me. The door would just open, and the
Oh,
boss would the boss would walk in and say, can you brief Prince Charles? And there you
wow.
go. And at one
An
point,
average day.
yeah. Uh, yeah, but I think the level of work that I was doing within that role, the Prime Minister would walk in, the Prince
Mm.
would walk in, or the Defence Secretary of State, Secretary of State for Defence would walk in. They wouldn't announce them from a security perspective that they were arriving that day, but they'd walk into the office, and next minute I'm briefing these people when I'd actually 2 seconds ago been playing Minesweeper or something on the computer, just hiding the
Yeah.
screen. Um, but yeah, that was the level of work that I was doing. And then uh, that the other part of my career, the first job that I had when I left the Air Force, was I ended up running the London Olympics from a medical perspective.
Yes.
Mika and I went traveling for a short period of time to find out who I was post service to who I was as a person. So that was fantastic. And then my first job was the London Olympics, of which I originally went in to be the medical manager of one of the venues, the swimming pool, the
Mm.
stadium, whatever it was going to be. And then about 2 months, 3 months before the games, the guy that was my boss, who was running the whole park at Stratford, the village, with the opening ceremony, closing ceremony, 10 venues, you name it, um, he got offered a job that he couldn't turn down. It was his dream job, and they wouldn't wait for the games. So he had to take it there or then or nothing.
Yeah.
And the director of medical just looked at me and said, "Well, you're the only one, because it was very skeleton people running it. You're the only one that's got relationships with all the venues. You're the only one that knows about the opening ceremony. You're the only one that you know understands the protocols and the strategies that we're running in those environments. You're it." So
Mm.
the next minute, I'd gone from being one venue manager to being the operational manager for the whole of the Olympics,
Wow.
and
Yeah.
so that was huge and challenging. And it was like being in the military. I left Mika at home and moved away for months, and we're doing 16-hour days. It was that
Wow.
immovable dates, immovable training, immovable tasks. We didn't have the medical support. The games couldn't go on if we didn't
Mm.
have the right people in the right places. And so that was huge. And then after that, obviously, recovered from being diagnosed with cancer, um, testicular cancer that I had. Then, going through all of that, which took me close to nearly 2 years to get over.
Gee. Yeah.
Um, and then 2016, we moved to Australia and start your life again.
Yes.
Uh, Coming over here with all of that CV that I've just told you, and everyone going, but you've never worked in Perth.
Yep.
Couldn't
Mm.
get a job to save my life.
Mm-mm.
Uh, so yeah, I bummed around at a few jobs, and then coaching came along, which is something that I always wanted to do, but I had no specific timeline. It was a passion of mine at some point in my career. I ended up doing it and starting a business because there was nowhere else for me to go, and it's been a, as you know, because we started around the same time, it's been
We
a hell of
did.
an educational journey.
Yeah,
Because
to
I'd
say the
never been in
least.
business. I'd always been a part of huge teams, and now all of a sudden it's
Right.
like, how do I market? How do I sell? How do I network? How do I pitch? What am I selling? I know
Mm.
I've got so much to offer, and I've got all this experience, and I'm bloody good at what I do, but it doesn't mean that you have a business. There's
No.
so many other aspects that have nothing to do with your skill that you need to get right to get the right clients, to get the right income,
Mm.
to get the right brand and market. And so, yeah, the whole life for me seems to have been a bit of a challenging journey, but I've loved it.
And Nigel, I think there's a lot to be said about your resilience as well. I mean, we all know that suicide is at an all-time high. How did you not give up through all of that? Because I think, a lot of people just said, I'm done. I'm tapping out. Like, this is just one thing after the next. How did you keep going?
I think because I had a fantastic family at the time.
Hmm.
Things have gone wrong there as well over the years, but having Mika on board, we've been together 22 years now, especially since that breakup of the marriage, my first marriage. Uh,
Hmm.
then obviously doing the Aeromed job, and she had a medical background, as you know, as well. So, and she'd been in the military, so she understood the level of commitment that was required, and my
Yeah.
values as to why sometimes that always came first, had to, especially with the people and the patients that I was dealing with, and then my commitment to the Olympics, knowing how great it was and how huge the role was and life changing, and an honor, to be honest, to be able to do what I did.
Hmm.
And if she just needed to be there in the support to run all the way from our house up to give me some sandwiches or a cuddle at the time, just to make sure I could get on with the next day, she did it. Um, and coming out to Australia and doing that together, and I think having those military values of never giving up, everything's a
Mhm.
challenge, but only if you want it to be a challenge. And business has been the hardest challenge for me, I think, because in a military, when you're a part of a team, and it's not about the I, it's about the we. And then all
Yeah.
of a sudden go into business and you have to go, I'm really good, come and work with me. And
Hello.
yeah, pictures of yourself everywhere and saying, look at me, I'm really good. Come and give me your money." Um, and that's really alien when you've been a part of a team. And it's always, especially for me, as you know from the work I do, how can I help you?
Mm. Yes, and
So
add value.
yeah, so it's hard to sell yourself that you're good at what you do when ultimately your clients are your value. Your
Yeah.
clients are your marketing, to be honest. But some people that have that work and such extensive work and such life changing, yes, it's fantastic. But I don't want to tell everyone they had the problem in the first place. So,
Precisely.
it's been an educational journey, to say the least, to find out where I belong. And now with Leadership Alchemy, it used to be Growth Evolution Coaching, as you know, but
Yeah.
specializing, as you've heard from my career, in what has served me the most in my career, but how I've grown as a person and elevated in my own career, but how you know I look back at my military career and I see, obviously, on the Facebook posts of the medical page, if you know what I mean, of the
Mm.
career of the people that worked with me, that I knew that I got promoted, or I hopefully showed them a good way to lead, have now excelled within their own military careers, and they've got huge careers and ranks and everything else. And knowing that I had a part of that, or they've modeled maybe and mentored from what I've taught them, and how I was to them, and they're doing it to other people, that's fascinating. It's
Yeah, that would be.
so
And
yeah.
Nigel, yes, I do want to say Mika is so supportive of you. She is such a beautiful lady. I just think it's such a blessing to have someone like that in your corner.
Yeah, I don't think I could have done. Certainly now, when you first start the business,
Yeah.
luckily she's got a good job, and it pays really well. But when you first start business, when you have to invest in the business,
Yeah.
and again, like I'd said, when I first arrived in Australia, I hadn't necessarily had the long term roles
Mhm.
where at the level I'd been executive level that I've been working at in the UK. So then when you start a business pretty much on a shoestring on the one income, and it takes a while to get going, and you're relying on her going out and working in a very challenging environment herself. She's a sonographer, so she does all the
Yes.
baby ultrasound. So some
Mm.
days that's not. It sounds great because it's always babies, but there's times, as we both know, that doesn't work out, or people's stories, and everybody thinks that a sonographer picture is about getting a lovely picture, a scan picture of the
Yes,
baby.
one
But
does.
actually,
Yeah.
but ultimately, she's only there to find fault. That's what
Yeah.
they're looking at on a scan, and it happens.
Mm.
She has to deal with that. She has to deal with the people. She has to deal with the outcomes of those appointments and break the news to them. And
Tough.
uh, yeah, and that's where I mutually support her. I get the phone calls during the day as she walks around the
Mm.
hospital to have 5 minutes before the next patient because she needs to put the smiling face on and be there for them. But you know,
Yeah.
there's things that trigger her as a woman, as we both know. Um,
Yes.
that when she's doing that job and she wants to do it to the gold standard, there's times that she needs me to scream and shout at or cry at, and
Yeah.
to allow her to release to go back and be the best person she can be for the next client, next patient.
Mm. You guys are a
So
great team by the sounds of things.
yeah, she's been my rock, and again, she's gone through most of the nearly all of the coaching that I've gone through as well. So she's got a huge
Mm.
interest and will come into the business in the future. So whenever I'm working with clients or I'm designing things, she's like, "What are we doing? What are we doing? How can I help? How can I help?" So yeah, having that level of support has been mind blowing, to be honest. Yeah.
And Nigel, if I can ask, so your first marriage, it didn't work out. During that time, I can imagine you must have asked yourself, why me? Why is this happening? Did you ever expect to meet someone like Mika in the random way that you did?
No,
Yeah.
and I think as it's the typical phrase, once burnt, twice shy, or whatever it is. It's
Yeah.
you have that relationship with someone, and you think that it's the one because you're young, and we
Mm.
ended up with kids, and the priority is the kids, and then certainly being in the military, it's not a 9 to 5 job. So when they say, sorry, you're not home this weekend, you're going to miss the kids' birthdays,
Mm.
you're going here, you can't turn around and say no. So that takes a lot of understanding from my wife, and my ex was great with that for a while.
Mm.
Um, but after a period of time, things change, people change, the kids change, health changes. There was a lot of circumstances, and in the end, we were like almost two completely different people, and it wasn't pleasant, it wasn't nice, and I'd given up most of the things I could give up to try and sustain that, and to the end, I'd lost myself, if you know what I mean. So
Mm.
the straw,
I
the camel
do.
had to break at some point.
Mm.
Um, and then giving yourself, as I do, wholeheartedly to someone, that's my version of a relationship. It's all
Yeah,
or nothing,
same.
the same as
Mm.
I am with my clients um, and my friends. Mika came along, who was the most beautiful girl next door,
Mm.
who had the same family background, the same values, the education, the wanting to excel and grow all the time. She challenged me more than I challenged myself.
Ah,
If anyone's going to kick my backside, it's her. Um,
I love
and
that.
but what even now with the coaching, when she's even though it's been a hard journey, from having loads of clients and nothing, and really,
Mm.
where am I going to niche? What am I going to do? She constantly, when she sees me come home from a client and she sees me buzzing, she sees me the change that I help with people and where they're going, and the way that the clients keep in touch afterwards, because you become more of a family friend, because you know more about them, they're good, they're bad, they're ugly, that they won't tell other people. So again, like a brother
Mm.
in the military, it's a bigger bond, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
she sees all of that empowerment that it gives me, and she said, "Yeah, as hard as the journey has been, you're not giving up because it's obviously your purpose. You
Mm.
just need to get that marketing and the branding right, and the right client with the right message. And once you get that, and you're serving properly, and it becomes a bigger business, then oh my god, it's going to be incredible." So yeah, that having that in the background has allowed me to really excel in what I do, and really keep in it and believe in it. And it takes two people. You can't do it all on your own, which is
No.
back to the leader
Mm.
scenario. You have to trust in your team, and she's my team.
And I know you've just rebranded. How did you find that experience?
Oh, a lot more, a lot more than I thought it was going to be.
Yes.
Um, but I needed it. I needed that. Everybody was telling me where I should be.
Mm.
because I loved coaching and I went into it naively as a medic. Someone
Mm.
comes to you with a cough, a cold, or a broken leg, or whatever it may be, mental health issues, you deal with it. And I love that variety. I just wanted to help.
Yeah.
And naively, that's fantastic. And the people I had got the benefit, but it wasn't necessarily sustainable as a growth for my business. And talking to people that knew me, people that understood my career, understood what I'd achieved, they were like, "So you've just told me that you've won 3 national leaderships in the UK, once in the military for that big Aeromed job that you did, and 2 for the Olympics for the teams you created and the success that it was. And why the hell aren't you teaching leadership?"
Yeah.
And I went, "Because it's just me being a nice guy wanting people to grow and
Mm.
and and for them to flourish and them to be the best versions of themselves." And they just went, "I think that if you sort of brainstorm, sort of backtrack on why and break it down as to why you are a great leader, and then add your coaching tools and your life experiences with all the stories, and there's millions of them, um, you've got your niche." And I'm just like, "Oh, holy shit!"
Yeah.
Uh, and as soon as I started to do it, this window behind us had about 50 post-its over it, all different
Oh,
colors and
okay.
things. And then we sort of broke that down and streamlined it. And eventually I'm just like, actually, this is something I am exceptionally passionate about. I've
Yeah.
got all the life experience, I've got all the coaching tools, and I've got the stories and the metaphors and the wherefore to just help people in business who are, like yourself, excellent at what they
Mm.
do, but
Thanks,
maybe not
Nigel.
the greatest communicators, the great empowerers, the greatest connectors. Technically, they're absolutely superb.
Mm.
I'm not being rude, but if you look at engineers, you look at IT specialists, you look at accountants, you look at lawyers, give them a spreadsheet, give them code, give them a circuit board, and
Yeah.
leave them in a room on their own, they'll come out with gold.
Yes.
But as their business has grown, all of a sudden there's 10, 20, 30 people sat outside the door that they need to go and talk.
Mm.
They need to go and empower. They need to go and delegate. They need to build rapport, and it may not be necessarily their forte. So I help them find out who they are, what's their best style, how to engage, how to be real and authentic, how to build those relationships, how to inspire and empower and engage with their team, how to get the most out of their people and create high performance teams. Because your business, no matter what your business is only as good as the people and the team that you have within it, whether
Yeah,
they're selling
very
a
true.
service or whether they're selling a product. It's your team that are your stakeholders, not just your employees. If you can get them on board, and they're all working in the same direction, and you don't have to think about it, and you can be the visionary mission person at the top that's leading and the captain of the ship and just steering it in a direction, then
Mm.
everyone's rowing in the right direction, and business can grow. But they may not necessarily, like me, I'm a brilliant coach. But as my business grows, I want a beautiful marketer. I want
Mm.
a social media person. I want someone to write copy for me because they're much better at it than I. And my
Mm.
business will only go forward stronger by having them as my team.
Yeah.
So what do I need to do, and what do they need from me to be the best marketer and best version of themselves so they can help me grow
Yeah.
in a way that I don't know how to, as you know what I mean. And it's having that trust in your team, and allowing them to be that is only adding value to yourself. So that's the sort of coaching that I bring. It's really holistic. It's really personable. It's about the people. It's about the team. It's about the culture, and growing that, and creating a oneness really within your business.
And Nigel, what do you believe makes a great leader? Are there some key, I guess, characteristics that you feel are essential to be a great leader? Or perhaps there's some things you shouldn't be?
Um, Listening. I think,
Mm.
how can I serve that? You think that as a leader you need to be delegating or telling and
Mm.
instructing and commanding, and even in the military it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
If you look at all the films, what you'll have is the brigadier or the general standing around the big map, and he's got all of his commanders. He's got his medical, he's got his logistics, he's got his armament, he's got his transport, he's got his whatever, all there. And he says, right, the mission is that we need to go from A to B, or we need to take that village, or we need to do this.
Mm.
What do you need to achieve that task? What have you got to achieve that task? What's your strategy? And he goes around and listens to all of his experts, his marketer, his brander, his receptionist, his whatever it may be. And
Yeah.
eventually, taking all of that into consideration, as a leader, you then come up with a plan. But your team have been heard. You've taken all of their expertise into consideration. So they're more likely then to follow the plan because they've been heard. Whether their point was taken or not taken, the fact that you listened and in the bigger picture they understand why their comment didn't fit the need for the mission, then but they're still willing to come up and offer ideas.
Mm.
They're all and that's what a leader is about. It's about utilizing everything and like the reverse, almost like the reverse pyramid. As a leader, what do my team need of me to do their job to the best of ability to ultimately I gain?
Yeah.
Whereas everybody is like, well, I'm the boss in charge, so I tell you what to do.
Yes.
I had a story I use when I was a baby, and I said I wanted to be the corporal when I was one of the the SACs at the bottom of the rank. But my flight sergeant called me into his office, and he's a Scouser, if anyone knows what that is, from Liverpool. Very, very
Yeah.
funny people, very, very funny people, but sort of Liverpool area,
Right.
but
Okay.
hard as nails at the same time. So
I
he called
see.
me in the office and said, "Look, the corporal's going away to Iraq on detachment, and I want you to step up and be the acting corporal." So straight away, as a young married man, I'm like, "Fantastic," because I get to wear the rank,
Yeah.
which everybody wants because they look better, stand taller, and
Yeah. In charge.
I get a little bit more money.
Yeah.
And as a young married man, then you always need more money.
Mm-hmm.
And he said, "And I'm not going to give you the rank, and I'm not going to give you the pay." And I'm like, "Whoa, hold on, this is a con." And
Mm.
especially coming out of that Scouse accent, if you know what I mean, from Liverpool, it almost like he was taking the mickey out of me and using me.
Yeah.
And he said, no, it's going to be the best career lesson that you ever learn. And I'm like, okay, here we go. Well, give me the bullshit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
If if you can get your peers to work with you and for you when you have no rank and you have no power, then when you get the rank and you get the power, you will never need to use it.
Mm.
And I went, you bastard.
Yeah.
That sounds reasonable.
It
And
does.
it but it taught me a lesson that it was about how I engaged with my team, how I
Mm.
briefed my team, how I made them a part of the team. It was a whole holistic approach, not just do as I say. Because how many leaders go, point at their rank and go, because I told you.
Ah, yes.
What do
So
you
many.
then give to that person? Your
Mm.
minute.
Yeah.
Whereas I brought them on the journey. And even if they were a very, very junior and they were only doing a tiny aspect of the bigger picture, they were just a tiny cog in the big wheel.
Mm.
Ultimately, they knew that they mattered because that role was
Yeah.
important for everybody else to be able to complete their tasks. So it was that wholeness that was created of the way you deal with people and you bring them on the journey. And I treated them as people rather than whatever the rank was. Whenever I went, even in my military career, and certainly when I did the Olympics, they worked for Nigel, not the senior medical operations manager of the London Olympics. They worked for Nigel. They wanted to
Yeah.
do the best for Nigel. What did Nigel need from me for him to succeed or the mission to
Mm.
succeed? So that was one of the greatest lessons that I ever learned. And it's what I want to go out and help people with when they have that pressure or that fear or that stress of I've got to go and command all these people and tell them all what to
Mm.
do. And it becomes overwhelming and then takes them away from who they are as an expert.
Yeah. So
Um,
true.
and what their job is and their speciality and their point of difference and growing the business because they're too involved in everything. It's like
I think sorry, Nigel, you go for it.
no. I think it allows them then to utilize the team and the team to be of a value that the business needs them, and all of a sudden everybody's elevated.
A lot of what you're saying I can resonate with because I think, they don't teach you this stuff at art school. You kind of have a passion and you go guns blazing in my case. And I think a lot of the time when I first got my team, I thought I had this as egotistical as what this sounds like. No one can do it better than I can. So they would do something and then I would like fix it. And I'm like, obviously through personal growth and work with Paul, I realized that's not the best approach because I'm actually taking the experience away from that person to actually
Yep.
learn. But it was such a mindset shift for me because I've had to really just be, well, how can I actually help this person, step into the best version of themselves and actually not have me having to be a part of it because it's actually a lot better. It frees up my time. And they also get to think for themselves and feel more empowered because they can make those decisions. But it's such a mindset shift because I think a lot of us, we think, oh, no one can do it like I can. We've got this great team at our fingertips. And then because we're so full of it, we don't actually utilize them to their full capacity.
Well, if I had you as my marketer and I was coming in and telling you I want this and I want it in that color and I want it in that font
Mm,
and I want this picture and you just end up as a Canva drawer.
yeah.
How long are
Yeah.
you going to stay in my business? And what of
Not long.
your extensive knowledge and capability, what am I getting of you? 5%, 10%?
Mm,
Whereas if I come
yeah.
to you and said, look, this is a vision of a campaign that I may wish to run.
Mm,
What do you need from me to achieve it? Is it the software? Is it the time? Is it the tools? Is it money? Is it pictures? Is it a narrative? What do you need from me to do this to the best? And I don't need to know that. But
mm-mm.
if you go round and you do that to everyone in your department, I'm only providing and serving them for them to serve me in the best possible way. So my
Yeah.
job stays the same, if you know what I mean. I am, like I
Mm,
said, the inverted pyramid. What does everyone need from me as a leader for them to grow, for the business to grow, for their services to grow, for their personal and professional knowledge to grow and education to grow? If I am investing in them, where are they going to invest?
mm,
Back to me.
yeah.
Vicariously, my business grows, but my people grow and they stay. And
And
that extensive knowledge and that IP that remains and that lack of training or paying a recruiter stupidly 15 to 20 grand to replace that person twice a year. If I
yeah.
invest in my leadership and I invested in my people, how much is, you pay that 20 grand once instead of paying
Yeah.
it for 5 roles within the business. Um, and that's the value of understanding yourself, and that's what I do. You coach you as a leader, as a
Yeah.
person, as a professional. How do I coach you to be the best person and the best leader to help you with that mindset, so ultimately your whole business grows?
Yes.
And that's what it's all about.
And Nigel, what are some ways in which business owners can work with you?
um, there's a
So you've got
one-to-one service.
yeah.
So I work with people and coach them one-to-one. So like with yourself as a leader, working through a 3 or 6 month program or a year
Mm,
program
or
of,
lifelong.
yep,
It's a
and that's what I'm
lifelong
hoping.
commitment.
Yeah, and
It's not just
that's
a
what I
quick fix.
hope, and that's what I hope moving forward. Um, working with people to be their confidant, to be their mentor, to be their advisor, but also be their accountability for them to grow themselves, for them to grow their business, but also teaching them from a coaching perspective more about themselves and how they can be a best leader, but be authentic, natural to you. So you trying to be me as a leader, it's never going to work. Your team are not
No.
going to be you. It's not authentic. It's not trustworthy. It's like, oh, I can feel she's acting in the role. Wait for the bad to happen, if you know what I mean. But how
Yeah.
can you go out and not be stressed and be yourself and have those length of conversations, build that rapport with your team, build that family feel, but allow them at the same time and make them accountable? How can you make someone accountable like you as a marketer if I'm telling you what
Mm,
to do all the time?
yeah, of course.
You're only accountable for what I've told you. I need to
Mm,
give you all the tools to make you accountable for the work you're producing.
mm,
There's so many little nuances like that, and it's all about connection. It's all about communication. It's all about teaching them how to read their stuff. And
yeah.
you are a very more visual, intuitive person. How do I need to talk to you in your language for you to get the message I'm trying to give? Everything
Mm,
is personalized. Whereas you may need in your sales team a more dominant person, and they need to hear it in a different way. So adaptability within a leader to speak to your team in the way that they need to hear it. Because I could give you a brief in the way I understand the job I need to
mm,
be, and you're going, yes, boss.
yeah.
And I go away and you produce something totally wrong, which is
And it
what you were having
happens.
staff when they first came on board, because it's
Yeah.
like, that's not what I told you, but it's what they heard.
Yeah.
So
So
how can
Nigel,
you
you
adapt
work
that?
Sorry, so
Gone.
you've got your one-to-one, and then do you do any, like, group,
Yep.
training or anything like
I can
that?
do some group trainings. I'm actually looking and designing at the moment to do what they call a leadership roundtable.
Oh,
So I'm
great.
looking at possibly getting like-minded leaders within certain professions around the table, coaching and mentoring them, but also allowing them the space to peer support each other.
Mm,
So that's what I'm trying to do at the moment. Was playing around with that this morning, but do group workshops because I think that helping the leader or the CEO or the manager of the business, the executive team need to be on board. They need to understand the strategies and whatever that's going on. Then there's going to be team workshops for the people on the floor to understand the new culture or the new drive or the way we're going to work. So I can work holistically with the whole part of the business, but it needs to
great.
be generated from the leader downwards. So yeah, that's where I'm going to start and generate, but then it builds into other aspects.
So now I just have 2 more questions I'd like to ask. So if you could
Not
go
a
back
problem.
to your 18-year-old self before you joined the military,
Do
what
you
would
think my
your
memory's
advice
that good? I'm an old man now.
well, when you were 18, what would your advice now be to your 18-year-old self?
Ooh. Uh, I've made a lot of mistakes like everybody else. Um, but I've also done a lot right in my life to achieve what I've achieved.
Mm,
Um, so that's a hard question, but I think um, just trusting and being confident in self, in the fact that my values that I brought from the military, the values that I had personally anyway. Um, it came up very much with my mentor, who's my coach last night. My
mm,
core values, really, that I adhere myself to and strive towards, may not be everybody else's. So I think a little bit more. Um, not less judgment, that's not the word, but a lot more leniency with people that I work with and everything else that may not see the world through my eyes. Uh,
mm.
but I need to be more mindful, I think, of their journeys, and that's where the coaching has come in and helped me hugely to understand people and understand that their journey is not my journey, but it's allowed me the adaptability for me to test myself in how do I need to take them in the way that they see it and need it for where they want to go.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a learned lesson, but it's taken me a long time to get there.
And Nigel, the second question is if you had one bit of advice to give a leader, what would it be?
I think stop trying to be everything and
Mm.
actually doing nothing.
Yeah.
Um, they waste a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of stress um, trying to fix everything in their business because only they can see the vision. Well, that
Mm.
means that they've not portrayed that vision. They've not, you know, it's not a culture that they've got throughout the business. And I think investing in the team is the only way, and allowing that team to be the best that they are is the only way forward. And
Mm.
allowing you then to be the captain of the ship. He needs to know, the captain of the ship on a big cruise needs to know what the menu is, but he's
Yeah.
not going to go there and peel the carrots.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I
He he
do.
he knows the standard and the quality that he wants the chef to portray to meet the brand,
Mm.
but he doesn't have to go and do the colouring in or of the picture or peel the spuds to do the job. He just needs to say, I want you to reach this level. This is the quality I need. What do you
Mm.
need from me from a leader to do that? Is it the best produce? Is it the best knives? Is it the best team? Is it what's lacking for you not to produce that you would want from me in the ideal world? Sometimes you can't give it,
Mm.
of course.
Yeah.
There's sort of softwares that you must use within your business that are worth hundreds of thousands, which you can't use. So you make the best of what you've got until you get to that stage where you can then
Yeah.
afford that. So it's using that. And I think that's my best lesson for bosses. Don't try and be everything. Um, Try and utilize everybody within your business so you can all grow together.
I think you've touched on two really important things there as well, Nigel. So the first bit of advice that you gave your younger self is like have your core values defined. I didn't realize how important this is, and I wish I'd done it at 18. But like really sit down and think about them, and it really gives you a compass to navigate your life from. And the second bit of advice that you shared is actually share that vision that you have, because if it's in your head, no one else in your team knows exactly what that is, how they're ever going to help you get there. So thank you for sharing that.
It's like everybody in the back of the bus going, "Where are we going?"
Nigel, where is the best place for our listeners to go should they wish to connect with you?
Um, Leadership Alchemy, www.leadershipalchemy.com.au or nigel@leadershipalchemy.com.au, or give me a call. I mean, having that first conversation to work out my strategy is to help you find out what you think your triggers are, help you
Mhm.
address those, but then start to peel back the onion to what's really going on, whether that be
Mm.
personally with coaching or whether it be coaching as a leader. So both aspects I still do because my passion is about people growing, whether that be as a leader or as a person, as you know. So
Yes.
yeah, I can have both of those conversations. It's the core of what I do.
So we'll definitely pop the links in the show notes, but I do want to encourage you. If you do feel called, please give Nigel a call. I can fully vouch for him. He's a wonderful human and he's really helped me in so many ways that I think he doesn't even realize. And he is the real deal. There's a lot of coaches out there and they've done a 4-week course and they think they've landed. Nigel is legit. And I can fully vouch for him. So please get in touch with him. Nigel, thank you so much for all that you've shared today. I love our conversations as always.
No, that's absolutely honour to do that. And like I said, our journeys together, we've always helped each other. You've helped me as much as I've helped you,
Thank
and I
you.
think that's the only way to proceed.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Nigel.
Thank you.